Howdy, folks. Welcome to Cattle Trails Showcase. I'm Ron Wilson, Poet Laureate. Mighty glad to be your host. This is our March edition of Cattle Trails Showcase. Hard to believe it's March. I can look out my window and see 6 inches, half a foot of snow out here. But it is March, and today we're zooming to Clearwater, Kansas to see a community that was featured on national television. So we're excited about that. We do have a Western trivia question for you to answer. Feel free to answer in the chat. What was the name of Roy Rogers' wife on screen and in real life? Roy and who? So feel free to answer in the chat. The purpose of the Cattle Trails Showcase is to continually highlight the communities, historical elements, museums, and other attractions along the Chisholm and the Western Trail. Showcase is brought to you by the International Chisholm Trail Association, of which Dennis Katzenmeyer is president, Michael Grauer is vice president, Nancy Lawrence is secretary, Mary Lou Rivers is treasurer, Lonnie Stieben is our showcase chair, and they're all online with us. Lonnie's going to tell us about today's program because his community was featured on this national television program. Lonnie played a key role in bringing this about, but the point I'd like to make is that the key attraction that brought this program and this national television crew to Kansas was the Chisholm Trail. The fact that they could ride on the historic Chisholm Trail. Lonnie is a longtime community development specialist for the Southern Kansas Telephone Company and chair of the Kansas chapter of ICTA. So Lonnie, tell us about this nationally televised TV show.
Okay, Ron, would you want to share your tourism video, or you want to wait to do that afterwards? Or
What's your preference?
We got a minute. I think everybody probably enjoys seeing you did a great job with that, and then I'll start with what I've got.
Well, okay.
If you want, but
sure. This is a video produced by Kansas Tourism.
Kansas is a cowboy state. It's in our legacy. Kansas blazed a trail throughout Western history. It all started with the Native American Indian, as you know, who roamed the open prairie and hunted buffalo. Then explorers came west, braving harsh conditions, Coronado, Lewis and Clark, and John C. Fremont's expeditions. Kansas became a key crossroads of the trails of the day, to Oregon, California, and down to Santa Fe. When Texas longhorns needed to be shipped east by rail, they drove those cattle to Kansas up the long Chisholm Trail. It was the toughest cattle drive those cowboys had ever seen. To Dodge City, Ellsworth, Caldwell, Wichita, Newton, and Abilene. Those townsfolk knew they'd better have things all battened down, because some cowboys sure went wild when they finally got to town. They'd gamble and shoot and drink up their fill, and a few left their graves up on top of Boot Hill. But like everything else, those times went through change. Homesteaders built fence where there was open range. Brave settlers came west and made the homestead as their perch and built the institutions of the home, the school, the church. Now the spirit of the cowboy in our state is living still, from the feed yards out west to the rolling Flint Hills. In the heart of a Kansan, the cowboy spirit lives on, and the values our people will still draw upon. They work hard and play hard, are honest and free. Values that matter to you and to me. It's part of the character that makes Kansas great. So we're thankful that Kansas is a cowboy state.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to share that. I was pleased that the State of Kansas Tourism Division would want to honor cowboy history with a video at all.
Yeah, you did a great job with that. And we want to thank all the out of non-Kansans for obliging us to view that this morning. So, well, one thing I've learned, it's easier maybe to organize the presentations than it is to do the presentations. Ron and I've had to practice Zoom a little bit, and so bear with us if I fail, because it's been a good education. Ron is so helpful all the time. So, but like Ron indicated earlier, part of the reason for this presentation, up to this point we've done, in fact, we need to celebrate, this is the 15th presentation, but up to now we've pretty much visited the museums and indoor events that are historical along the Chisholm Trail. So I wanted to share the idea that, especially as we get into spring and summer, not all of our events have to be indoors. In fact, there's a lot of interest for outdoor activities along the Chisholm Trail, and this is a prime example. Best of America by Horseback came to, actually, we were supposed to start in Caldwell, Kansas on a 5-day trail ride. We got to Caldwell. Caldwell did a great job being a host. We went out to Wellington Lake, which is just north of Caldwell, and it started raining, and it didn't quit raining for 3 days. So we had to improvise, and we ended up moving them all up to the Clearwater Saddle Club. But so we didn't get to spend every night on the trail like they were hoping, but we got them back out the next morning. We had about 4 or 5 big horse trailers, and we loaded up. We had 75 riders for this event, came from 17 states. And of course, Tom with the Best of America is a big attraction, but the big attraction was getting to actually experience the Chisholm Trail. And you'll see that as we watch this video today. But my thought is, and I guess one other point, the next year they came back, there was enough demand. The next year they came back in 2020. In fact, Nancy came down and presented at that one and did a great job, but they came back in 2020 and we only had about 35 riders. Again, it rained 3 out of the 5 days, but we were seasoned by that point and we got it all handled. And the first video only had like 900 and some views in 2019, but the one with the cattle drive in 2020, where we only had 35 participants, had over 2,500 views as it was posted, and that was after it appeared on RFD TV several times and on the Cowboy channel. So is not probably telling anybody in this group anything, but cattle drives are significant when it comes to sharing the history in the Chisholm Trail. So Ron, I guess we're about ready. I guess a couple of things I wanted to point out because I don't want to interrupt. Tom C. is the host, and Tom's from Culpeper, Virginia. And they actually bring their crew out all over the United States, and he's ridden all over the United States if you ever watch his program. Now, Tom's retired in the last year, and Dale Shields, which is actually from Kansas, and you'll see Dale in the presentations, has taken over for the Best of America by Horseback rides. And the riders in both events came on Tuesday and they went home Sunday. So we got to see them and spend 5 days with them. Just great people. In the video that we're going to watch, there's a wagon, and that is the Florida Sheriff's Boys Ranch. They sent 15 young men up to participate in this ride, and I just wanted to share this. And they were just so great of gentlemen and so helpful. And it's great. I guess Florida is big about having boys ranches and homes, and not only boys, but ranches for the younger generation that's had a lot of misfortunes. And another thing, you'll see that they stopped by the Clearwater nursing home, and there was a reason for that. Tom actually drove on a couple cases for Roy Rogers. He was his driver. And Tom said they were driving by a nursing home one day, and I can't remember, it was in Oklahoma, I think he had mentioned, but he said, pull over, let's go in. And so they pulled over, and Roy Rogers went into the nursing home and actually shook hands with every resident in the nursing home. So that was a big thing for Tom in this deal too. And then one of the presenters was actually from Clearwater, Dean Dyer. His grandfather actually rode on great-grandfather, rode on 5 cattle drives. And I don't know if you read books, you'll mostly hear them say, and Michael, you may know that if you made over 1 cattle drive, that was usually pretty significant. And he actually went on 5 different drives, and they have a book which I have not been able to get my hands on that his great grandfather wrote about his experiences on the trail. And we need to get that tracked down. And then at the last point is Dr. Skylar Jones, a very distinguished individual. And his grandfather was J.R. Mead, was founder of Wichita, and J.R. Mead was very, very close friends with Jesse Chisholm and was very important to the development of the Chisholm Trail, to the hunting, and to the whole Western culture thing that developed in the 1860s, 1870s. So we'll go ahead, Ron. I'll see if I can make this work. And I appreciate everybody being here this morning.
Welcome to this episode of Best of America by Horseback. I'm Tom C. The Chisholm Trail. It's part of Western legends and cowboy history. Chisholm Trail exemplifies the cowboy spirit, ingenuity, and determination. It's celebrated in Western movies, poetry, and music. An estimated 5 million head of cattle were driven along this route from deep in the heart of Texas to newly established railheads in Caldwell, Wichita, and Abilene, Kansas. Camps grew to settlements and eventually cities. Small shops turned into booming industries. Farmers and cowboys became business tycoons. Trail brought change to all who lived near it or rode along it. Today, you can ride along and see wagon ruts on the trail. We will ride the heart of the Chisholm Trail from Caldwell, Kansas, known as the Border Queen town, to Wellington, Mayfield, Clearwater, and Wichita. We will meet the people and visit the towns that made this ride so special for us and who are committed to preserving the history of the Chisholm Trail and the Western way of life for future generations. On this episode, we will ride the Chisholm Trail to Clearwater, Kansas, escorted by the Cowskin Creek Clydesdale Hitch Team. The ride will go right through the town of Clearwater and out to the Chisholm Trail Saddle Club rodeo grounds. There, guests enjoyed an evening of cowboy music and rodeo events. Riders stopped by the Clearwater Nursing Home and Rehab Center, where residents got to pet the horses and Del Shields sang to them. It was a wonderful experience for both riders and residents. Join me now for part 3 of the Chisholm Trail Ride. I'm Tom C. We'll be right back.
Oh, I am a lonely boy, and I'm off on the Texas trail. My trade is cinching saddles and pulling bridle reins, but I can twist the lasso with the greatest skill and ease, or rope and ride a bronco most anywhere I please.
On this episode of Best of America by Horseback, Tom C. and 90 riders continue their ride along the historic Chisholm Trail, north from Clearwater, Kansas, towards Wichita, for part 3 of the Chisholm Trail Ride series. Last week on part 2, riders made their way from Mayfield, Kansas, along the Chisholm Trail to Clearwater. They rode right through the town of Clearwater, escorted by the beautiful Clydesdale Hitch Team and wagon from Cowskin Creek Clydesdale Farm. They also enjoyed an evening of cowboy music and food at the beautiful Haymaker Lodge in Mayfield, which sits on the undisturbed Kansas prairie right along the Chisholm Trail. On this episode, riders will leave Clearwater and ride north towards Wichita for the last day of the Chisholm Trail ride. It was a beautiful sunny day when the riders rode out of the Chisholm Trail Saddle Club rodeo grounds and headed north along the trail. Part of the ride around Clearwater was on paved roads and through busy intersections. Sam Wiley, our trail boss, and Carmen Schultz blocked traffic with the assistance from the Sedgwick County Sheriff's deputies at the intersections. It was only a short distance until the paved roads went back to dirt roads along the trail.
Oh, when we get bitted, we think down more than I. Some horse will shake his saddle, and it'll give the herd a fright. They're bound to their feet, boys, and mad
Riders were invited to stop at the Klossmeyer's dairy farm for a rest break. The Klossmeyers talked with the riders about the farm and the role they play as an agritourism farm, giving tours to visitors and school children from urban areas to teach them about the importance of farming and where their food comes from. They also talked about a field they rented from a neighbor that is right on the Chisholm Trail. There is a huge cottonwood tree in the middle of the field. They asked the neighbor if they could remove the tree, which would make working the field much easier, but he was adamant the tree would never be disturbed. He told them it was a well-known fact that drovers along the Chisholm Trail would always bury their dead under a cottonwood tree. He viewed the cottonwood tree and ground around it as hallowed ground that would never be disturbed. The riders thanked the Klossmeyers and headed back out on the trail. Lonnie Stieben and Sam Wiley laid out the route to take riders past strategic points along the Chisholm Trail, including a ford on the river where drovers would cross the massive herds of cattle. The next stop was at the Chisholm Trail Sports Complex, where a beautiful stone marker celebrates the Chisholm Trail and the importance it has in Clearwater history. The marker was erected in 1938 by the citizens of Clearwater and stands nearly 6 feet tall. Engraved into a thick stone slab are the words, "Over 3 million cattle and hundreds of thousands of tons of freight went over this trail in the years of its use."
We've got 20 miles before us till we bed these old cattle again. Don't mind ride and drag for my wages, 'cause I'm partnered with Badger and Slim. Abilene is the place where we're going. I hope she remembers me there. A sweet little lass of my memory, with a big yellow bow in her hair. Hey, yodeloo, yodeloo, hey, yodeloo, dee. Hey, yodeloo, yodeloo, hey, yodeloo, dee. These old prairies of Kansas are pretty. They're a sight for a tired cowboy's eyes. We'll sell this big herd tomorrow, draw wages before the night. Spend a few days in Cowtown, flirt with a pretty young thing. Head back to Texas to do this again. See her again next spring. Hey, yodeloo, yodeloo, hey, yodeloo, dee. Hey, yodeloo, yodeloo, hey, yodeloo, dee. Hey, yodeloo, yodeloo, hey, yodeloo, dee.
Stay tuned for more of Tom C's Chisholm Trail Ride in Kansas when Best of America by Horseback returns. Welcome back to Best of America by Horseback and Tom C's Ride with over 90 riders along the historic Chisholm Trail in Kansas. After taking pictures and a rest break at the Chisholm Trail marker at the Chisholm Trail Sports Complex in Clearwater, the ride continued through town to a special location, the Clearwater Nursing and Rehabilitation Center. Riders wanted to stop by and say hi to the residents. Many of our Best of America by Horseback rides are located outside of towns and cities, but we always cherish the chance to interact with local communities and share in the love of horseback riding with all of them. Tom, Dell, and the riders talked and laughed with the residents and let them pet their horses and ask all the questions they wanted about the ride. Once again, Dell took time to sing to a resident.
Have I told you lately could I tell you once again somehow? Have I said with all my heart and soul how I adore you? Well, darling, I'm telling you now.
My idea.
I can sing.
After a nice visit with the residents, Tom handed his horse off to another rider, and he and Bud Wackerly stayed behind in the nursing home, visiting each and every resident inside who were not able to go outside to see the horses. They joined back up with the ride about a mile or so out of town. Friday evening at the Chisholm Trail Saddle Club grounds, Lonnie Stieben and Ryan Carrick arranged a full evening of food, entertainment, and fun for our Chisholm Trail riders.
I just admire what you and your daughters and your wife and the other men and women and children that do so much here at the Saddle Club. So many other people. There's not many of you, but y'all sure do a great job here. What motivates you to be so involved with the community and the others to do so much?
It's pretty simple. It's the kids. We got to have these activities for the kids. We have to have the kids come out and be able to experience this kind of life.
An outdoor meal sponsored by the City of Clearwater, Clearwater Chamber of Commerce, and the Southwestern Kansas Telephone Company was served to our riders along with Craig Mikowski's famous cowboy beans. She cooked for hours in a cast iron pot over an open fire. The evening activities were kicked off with the national anthem performed by local Clearwater High School student Shay Brown. The Rocking H drill team also performed a great routine for the crowd.
You organized several things for us. The drill team, Shay Brown. I think we take them anywhere about any rodeo. So we give them all a run for them. He's an incredible here. The drill team is just perfect.
They just started this year. They've come together. They've worked their tails off to get to where they're at. They're just an amazing bunch of kids.
As you get a little older, you just try to stay in the saddle. These kids are jumping up in the saddle and galloping off, standing up. Just fantastic talent.
They make it look effortless.
They sure do.
Later in the evening, Tom C. introduced Del Shields, co-host of Best of America by Horseback and internationally known cowboy singer and songwriter, who performed for the riders and locals.
I've met a lot of famous people, presidents, movie stars, and all that stuff. This is the real deal. I've met John Wayne, Roy Rogers, always got it. This is the real deal. And it makes it that much more fun to pick on him because he's down to earth. It never went to his head. And every chance I have possible, I make sure it doesn't go to his head.
Tom couldn't pass up an opportunity to keep Del grounded as he hopped aboard the children's barrel train and had Ryan drive by the stage while Del was in the middle of a song.
Del Shields started his music the other night, and he is a greater performer as anybody over time. He's an absolutely wonderful person. When we went around, and those other kids are there, and he looked over and saw us go by. I was trying to mess him up, and he rolled his head, and he started laughing, but he never missed a note.
After Del's performance, the kids from the Florida Sheriff's Ranch went to Del and arranged a special gift for Jeff Parker's father, Joe Parker, who the kids call Pops Joe. They had Del autograph a selection of his CDs to Pops Joe, and they surprised him with this special gift. Pops Joe has been a strong positive influence in their lives, and he joined them for the entire ride, driving the covered wagon along the Chisholm Trail. Clearwater resident Dean Dyer shared stories from his great-grandfather's experience as a drover on the Chisholm Trail for 5 consecutive years.
So we went on to just east of Wichita and turned north. Great granddad said at one time in Wichita downtown, craygrass was higher than a man on a horse.
After the evening activities for the public were concluded, Ryan brought in roping calves for the riders to try their hand at roping. Ryan, Jeff Parker, and the boys from the Florida Sheriff's Ranch helped teach those who had never had the opportunity to try roping before.
Last night, there was a little boy out here that I don't know if he'd ever touched a cow, but he was in the pen with them. They were doing a little practice roping, and he was in there helping move them and sort them, and he was having the time of his life. His mom come to get him, and he was begging, just 5 more minutes, Mom, just 5 more minutes. There was no video games. There was no electronics. He was in there just having the time of his life.
People watching this that have children or grandchildren, well, we don't have a horse. But there are saddle clubs all over the country, just like the saddle club. They can go out and visit. You just immerse yourself into the great people that you have the privilege to meet, like you and your family. And they just open their arms and welcome you, don't they?
Yeah.
That's pretty much the way it
Yeah,
goes.
that's the way it works. I mean, we have a lot of little kids that come out. They come out here, they got to pet horses, they got to do things. We did pony rides, we did the barrel train rides. They had time of their lives.
What was the highlight of the week for you?
That's a hard question to answer. It's been a blast all week. So I think the best thing was last night after everything settled down, everybody was back, and some of the cowboys were out here in the arena with the kids, teaching them how to rope, and had the little kids on horses, and they were just having fun. They were smiling. That's the best part of it for me, is to see those little kids smile.
It was a great ending to a fun-filled evening of Western events, food, and entertainment. Stay tuned for more of Tom C's ride along the Chisholm Trail when Best of America by Horseback returns. Welcome back to Best of America by Horseback and Tom C's ride with over 90 riders along the historic Chisholm Trail in Kansas. A side trip offered to our riders while they were in Clearwater was a visit and private tour of the Cowskin Creek Clydesdale farm to spend a bit more time with their beautiful Clydesdale horses and their newest colts. Owners Scott and Janet Schwindeman personally met the group and talked about their operation. Tune in next week for part 4 of the Best of America by Horseback Chisholm Trail series, where Tom C. and guests ride in the streets of Old Cowtown in Wichita and enjoy the gunfights, entertainment in the saloons, and learn more of the history of Old Cowtown and the Chisholm Trail with Anthony Horsch, Director of Education and Interpretation at the Old Cowtown Museum. We will learn about the foundation of Wichita and how Jesse Chisholm spent his time there, trading goods along the Chisholm Trail. We'll take a look at one of the city's founders, J.R. Meade, and his grandson, Dr. Schuyler Jones, who spoke to our group at our banquet dinner at the conclusion of the ride.
He describes uncouth caravans, men, teams, and wagons covered with dust. The immense wagons which were used could carry in bulk as much as a railway car. And these wagons were loaded to the top of the bows with wool.
We'll also learn about the legacy of the Chisholm Trail and how it has influenced Western culture, movies, music, and more, and some of the efforts to keep the history of the trail alive. You won't want to miss the final episode of Best of America by Horseback's Chisholm Trail series. We'll see you next week. If you'd like to learn more about visiting and riding around Clearwater, Kansas, you can visit their website, clearwaterks.org. For more information about the Chisholm Trail Saddle Club and rodeo grounds, you can find them on Facebook at Chisholm Trail Saddle Club. For a DVD copy of the Best of America by Horseback Chisholm Trail series, You can call our office at 540-829-9555 or visit our website, bestofamericabyhorseback.com.
Thank you so much for watching this special episode of Best of America by Horseback as we travel the historic Chisholm Trail. We were honored and grateful to be able to ride this trail and visit with the wonderful communities who welcomed us into their towns and with the ranchers who allowed us to cross their land. Please join us next week as we continue riding along the Chisholm Trail, exploring the history, the towns, the people, and all the surrounding history of that. I'm Tom C., and we'll see you next week on Best of America by Horseback.
Thanks, Lonnie. Are there questions for Lonnie? Gary's got a question. There you
Yeah,
go.
Lonnie, or anybody, how does Tom C spell his last name? It flashed too fast.
SEAY. It looks like it should be say, but it's actually CSEAY.
Great, thank you.
And Lonnie, these shows were broadcast on RFD TV multiple times, and this was part 3 of a series of 4, and all of these are available on YouTube, right?
Right, and I could post the link, and I meant to post it in the comments, but all you have to do is just Google Best of America by Horseback 2019 Chisholm Trail Ride, parts 1 through 4. And the first part was, like I said, was supposed to be in Caldwell all day. And then the second part kind of goes into the terrain between Caldwell and Clearwater, which is all open country. And a lot of it is actually on the trail. And then we get to Clearwater, and then unfortunately we had to bus them a lot of times. We rented a big van, and we had, like I said, horse trailers, and moved them around because the roads got so muddy. But we were able to ride 2 or 3 days out and actually ride across the trail several times. And then the 2020, there's also a 2021, which is just 2 parts. And again, you just Google Best of America by Horseback Chisholm Trail Ride 2020. And it kind of takes a different viewpoint of some of the historic things along the trail. And most of that was filmed in the Clearwater, Wichita area.
So again, I'd make the point that this is a Best of America by Horseback. It's an ongoing series on RFD TV. They literally go all over the nation, coast to coast, but it was the Chisholm Trail that brought them to Kansas for this series. Any other questions for Lonnie?
Yes.
Dennis.
Yes. Lonnie, and I just typed a little chat here that I'm going to send through, but this would be wonderful if we could arrange something like this for our anniversary, for the 150th anniversary of the Chisholm Ellsworth Trail coming up in 2023. I can just envision a ride through Caldwell. Well, I leave Caldwell out because they're really not on the trail, but it's Kingman, Ellenwood, and Ellsworth. So I would really like to impose upon you to maybe organize something like that for that celebration, if you would consider it.
Well, yeah, and Dell Shields, which Mary Lou knows very well, and a lot of you've met Dell. I can't remember. Is it Independence, Ron? Do you remember?
Humboldt.
It's Southeast Canada.
It's Humboldt, isn't it?
Humboldt. Yeah, and Dell is now in charge of that. So I mean, they have. We need to be getting in touch with him to get it lined out. And if you get me the exact dates, I can email him, and we can maybe start down the line with that.
So it's pretty much a year-long celebration, so they could really pick whatever dates they want to unite.
They were out at Canopolis Lake. In fact, I was scheduled to go up there late last summer. And just as I got in the car to leave, I got a phone call from Ryan that was in this video, and Tom got sick, and he's kind of had some health issues. And so he had to go back. So they were kind of cutting things short. So, but they're familiar with your area up there.
Yeah.
And Dell would certainly know the area well. We have an announcement in the chat. By the way, congratulations to all of you who knew that Dale Evans was indeed Roy Rogers' wife. The announcement from Michael, the 31st annual Chuck Wagon Festival at the National Cowboy and Western Heritage Museum will be May 28 and 29 this year. And there's a link in the chat. Anything you want to add about that, Michael?
We had about 6,000 people last year. So it's a huge thing. Obviously, some of that was because people just wanted to get out, but we expect another big crowd. And I mean, I think we have 8 or 10 wagons from Kansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and other places. So it's really quite a deal. We're also circling back to Western music. We had a rotating situation with Red Steagall, Don Edwards, and Riders in the Sky for years, and that went away, and it's we're circling back to that. So anyway, it's a good time and good food to eat and fellowship and learn a little bit about cowboys while you're here.
Great. Any questions, any other questions or announcements? There's a post from Lonnie with links to watch the videos. All right, well, thanks everyone for joining us today. Lonnie, tell us what's coming up in store for Cattle Trails Showcase.
Well, we're a little bit tentative on this. We had some email issues and blocked emails, but I'm working with the Bullitt Texas State Historic Museum or History Museum and Catherine down there, and we have been in contact, and she is visiting right now with the education director. And if you Google the Texas State History Museum, they've actually done some presentations on the Chisholm Trail and the vaqueros, and so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to convince them to share one of those experiences with us. So, and I do want to thank everybody for suggestions. We've got a lot of good suggestions for future meetings for this year. So thanks for all the input on that. And I'll continue to work on them as we get time.
So thanks everybody for joining us and those who are viewing on YouTube. We do Cattle Trails Showcase Live on the second Friday of each month. So for next month, that would be Friday, April 8, 2022 at 10 a.m. Central Time. So be watching for that. Thanks, Dwayne, for your comments and support. To close our program today, this is Ron Wilson, Poet Laureate, saying thanks for taking time to join us in this place, and come on back next month for our Cattle Trails Showcase. Happy trails, everybody.